Hello and welcome to reading challenge number 40, and today is the final week of the Shirley Jackson marathon. I'm going to be talking about The Bird's Nest. I have a very specific reason for thinking that this book is her finest, and that's because it's the only one that has genuinely left me with chills at the end. Genuinely frightened for the main character at the end of this book. It is very cliched. It's not as well written as some of her other books are. I will admit that right out of the gate. It's not as well written, and it does have cliches in it, especially around multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity disorder, which is what the book is about. Our main character, Elizabeth, who lives with her domineering Aunt Morgen in her Aunt Morgen's house. Her mother used to live there as well, but her mother has died. And Elizabeth and Aunt Morgen have been now living together for quite some time, and Elizabeth is quiet and meek. She works at a local museum in quite a non-entity kind of role, just admin. Her life isn't much, basically. She goes to work, she comes home and deals with her Aunt Morgen being her Aunt Morgen. Her Aunt Morgen is very unpleasant. She's a very awful, self-centered woman who thinks she's a lot smarter and more special than she actually is. Elizabeth is having problems. She's been suffering from blackouts and insomnia, and it gets to the point where Aunt Morgen is accusing her of doing things that she doesn't think she's done, accusing her of going out at night and drinking Aunt Morgen's alcohol and stuff like that. And then Elizabeth starts finding that someone's leaving her notes at work, rather unpleasant notes. And what is all this about? After an incident at her Aunt Morgen's friends, she's persuaded to go and see a psychologist. And Dr. Wright, the psychologist, is rather like Aunt Morgen. He is a pompous, arrogant fool. And although he does immediately notice something is up with Elizabeth, he treats her like a child, essentially, and yeah, he's unpleasant. He persuades her to undergo hypnosis, and it takes a while because she's naturally quite uncomfortable with him. But eventually she sort of agrees to undergo hypnosis, and this is where we discover that Elizabeth is indeed suffering from what we now call dissociative identity disorder. She has 4 distinct personalities. Get your fingers in the frame, Rem. Elizabeth, which is the meek and mild. Then there is Beth, who's kind of childlike and desperate for love and attention, very sweet and naive. After her is Betsy. She's stuck in her teen years, and she's, quite volatile in her own way, but she's nowhere near as volatile and aggressive as Bess. Bess is unpleasant, to say the least, cruel and vulgar and malicious. Now, because of this hypnosis, these personalities that have already begun to assert, they end up in a battle for dominance. And I think it's entirely because of the hypnosis and the way Dr. Wright handles things. He handles things appallingly badly. He actually prefers a personality to the others. He prefers Beth because she's more animated than Elizabeth, but she is childlike and sweet and submissive, as well as being charming and lively and sweet. So preferences. Not supposed to have those as a psychologist. Anyway, Betsy takes control of the body and runs off to New York looking to find her mother, because Betsy is like Beth. Betsy believes that her mother is not dead. So Betsy and Beth believe that mother is still alive. Beth doesn't. But they're all fighting for dominance. Eventually, this whole New York escapade comes to an end. And what really frightens me about this book is that when she comes back from New York, she ends up back under the control of Morgen and Wright. There's this whole situation where several of the personalities are trying to persuade Aunt Morgen that Aunt Morgen is crazy, and Dr. Wright's treatment is not helping, and Aunt Morgen's behaviour towards her and all the other personalities is not helping. The fact that they're flicking in and out of control all the time between them is not helping. And what they decide to do in the end is essentially perform a sort of psychological exorcism of the vast majority of these personalities to extract Betsy and Bess, and possibly Elizabeth, from Beth, and just leave Beth. But the trauma of that, to my interpretation of the book, the trauma of that psychological exorcism produces an entirely new split, and that is the personality that ends the book. That personality is so deeply traumatized, she's just not really there at all. She's partially aware that something is deeply wrong with the way things are in her life. At one point she says to someone she doesn't even know, I'm the gingerbread man, I'm running away from a little old woman and a little old man. And then she goes to see Dr. Wright and she says, you can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man. You know, she doesn't want to be caught, essentially. She knows that she's in danger of being caught, but ultimately she ends up being caught because she's so traumatized. And Morgen and Wright, who are sort of in cahoots with one another, their intention is to rewrite her from scratch with personality traits and opinions and thoughts that they approve. And that is what terrified me so much about this book. The idea of her ending up in their control, absolutely helpless and unable to walk away, genuinely left me with chills, because Morgen and Wright, they are just hideous people, and they want to essentially build a human being from scratch inside the shell of this girl. It is horrifying. It is so brilliantly constructed, that sort of fight for dominance between all the characters. There's an internal war going on, but more even so than that, there is an external war for dominance and control over this girl going on. I kind of just wanted Elizabeth to come to herself and have all her personalities merge and just be the best of herself, and that just wasn't possible. And that was the horror of it. You knew that she wasn't going to come out of it, and that's what was missing from The Haunting of Hill House. I wanted Nell to have more of that fight in her. There's so much fight in Elizabeth and in all her personalities, even the ones you don't like. Even the ones you don't essentially want to win. You want Elizabeth to win, you want her to integrate, and you want her to get out of this situation, and the horror is that she doesn't. And you know she's not going to, just like you know Nell isn't going to get out of Hill House, but you don't feel the same way about Nell. At least I didn't. I was just like, yeah, she's obviously done for, and she's not really making a fight of it, is she? That's the thing that I don't like about Hill House. I feel like Nell was let down as a character, even though it was a better written book than The Bird's Nest. The writing is much better in The Haunting of Hill House, guaranteed, but The Bird's Nest is a better book because of the way the character is given more autonomy and more chance to fight, yeah? And still doesn't manage to get sort of... I want more horror in my horror. I want my characters to suffer more. I'm sorry, not sorry, but that's the reason why I prefer The Bird's Nest to Hill House, because I feel like the character was given enough autonomy that her loss, her failure, is truly devastating. It gave me chills anyway, and books rarely do. Books rarely scare me. Not much really scares me. I'm not good at things jumping out of dark alleys and stuff, but not much in books or films scares me at all. But that scared me. Ending up in the control of those two people scared the shit out of me. Not gonna lie. Anyway, that's that. I hope you've enjoyed the Shirley Jackson marathon. It hasn't garnered much interest, but it interested me and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed talking about these books, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading, apart from Hill House, which I didn't really enjoy at all because it pissed me off too much. Anyway, that's that. Next Friday I'm going to be talking about this, because I have to. I've actually dumped another book out of my schedule so I can talk about this. So I hope you'll join me next week. Thank you for watching today. Goodbye.